Welcome again to another learning session. Today we are going to describe the 5 eras of times, or the 5 periods that the Lenca people have crossed in their existence as part of the history on Earth. This is based in a series of narratives, recitals, and compositions that exist across the different ethnic groups that have composed the union of tribes and ethnicities that now we call Lenca. Basically, in a simplified version, we can group the narratives in 5 different periods. The span of history is shown in this graphic, and that includes 5 stages that we conclude from the beginning to what it was, the post-colonial systems. In the number 1, in the period number 1, we could place the narratives of the making of the land of Central America, or Manawara as we call it. And this is a very beautiful period of time described by the ancient sages as a time when there was much involvement from the sky beings, the star people, the sky canoes, giants, all kind of beings that were generous enough to shaved mountains in the islands of the north, which is now North America, and the island of the south, which is now South America. And they lifted great mountains, leaving behind 2 great sandy deserts in the south and in the north. And that land was then finally placed carefully in a project of a landfill that they created in an ancient ocean called Iltaran, where they had a battle with a creature, a dragon-like, a serpent-like, that was quite malevolent. And it was defeated, and it was locked up underground in a fiery jail or chamber. And in there is prisoner, and every now and then sort of tries to get out and makes the earth shake. The land was built, and this land became Manawara, and it goes from approximately what we call now the Motawas Valley, or Motagua Valley as they call it in Spanish, right down to the south to what we will call Veraguas Gulf or lands, which is now Veraguas in Panama. In between those lands is where the land bridge was built by the sky beings, who brought great flotilla of sky canoes, or canukele, and they were very successful at building this. They have extraordinary beings that could make big stones, round boulders, and slowly place block part of the currents of the ocean until split it into the Pacific and the Caribbean. Eventually, at the end, they left a small canal where the water could release some of the anger and pressure for being split apart, so that it wouldn't destroy the entire land bridge. The bridge was left incompleted. We believe that Central America was not completed 100% as it was planned before, but nevertheless, it was completed to the degree that the settling clan, or the governing clan Taulepa, was brought back from a safe shelter where it was placed temporarily while the land was being built, and is a forest at the end of the land, which means when the story is told, our ancestors, our elders always pointed southwards towards the coastal line of South America, and they say the Lenca forest was at the end of that land, where the ocean and the land ends, which means if we believe what the information of the ancient was trying to say, is that temporarily, as the land was being built in stage 1, the Taulepa, or House of the Jaguar, was placed in a holding forest. Interestingly, that's where the hints of a persecution begins, it's hinted that the sky beings had some kind of problems with someone else, and they have this enemy who was making sure, watching them so they wouldn't add more things into their creation. And there was this bird or a being that could fly and was their enemy. As a result, the Taulepa, the early clan, was placed into very careful disguised forest where they were not visible from the sky so they wouldn't be eaten by this creature. And to make sure that they wouldn't hint to a foreign eye that they existed, their food had to be concealed. And that's where the need of innovation came. And this group of sky beings and star beings who were led by the Wara, which is in our language, Wara means the Mako. In some other member tribes of the Lenca system is called Lapa. It was therefore negotiated with the ocean to allow the first planting of the edible leaf, and that's what we call seaweed. So the Taulepa clan, its first vegetables from the sea were seaweed, and then the landscape nearby also agreed to conceal edible pebbles, which were potatoes. So this is the first time that we face potential extinction, and we have to actually work very cleverly with nature to be able to harvest our sustenance. So the second period is when the land is almost completed, even though it wasn't completed, but it was habitable enough. So then the Wara makes the call and asks the skyholders or the guardians to allow the movement of the initial clan to make its way back to Central America, to Manawara, to the land that's being built specifically for them and the tribes that will come to become members of the kingdom. And what happens then is that the journey is very, very long. And because of the threat of the sky, of this other being that was searching to exterminate this new addition to humanity, what happens is that the Guara works with two chief magical serpents that we have. Is Tunawas, Titunawas, the head of the great eels of the Pacific waters, and Ti Kailawas, which is the head of the waters of the Atlantic. And they joined and they summon all the fish and sea critters so they can take the people from the Lenca forest on an ocean crossing along the Pacific coast upwards from south to north until they reach what is Manawara or Central America. That is very, very important because it begins the second stage of cultural evolution. But in the story also mentions that some of the members of the clan were exhausted or were afraid of things in the sky, and they have to stop by and hide on the water edge in mountains or in settlements that they could go and set up in camps along the coast by the forests that were there or rock shelters, and they had to hide because the bad creature in the sky was still searching. So in this way, there were quite a few branches of the clan that were left behind. Some of them took a while to rejoin to Manawara, and some of them was never heard of them again. So we, in the Lenca Taulepa tradition, we honor those who we believe are stewarding lands in the south. And then the culture goes into the stage 3, whereas they settle a small settlement in what is the Pacific coast of El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. And this area we still honor as Anamerique. And we call also the ocean or the Kai Anamerique. This, of course, became the royal governing district and was a sacred district. And it had a very interesting concept and perception in the Lenca world, particularly in the ancient Taulepa house. Unfortunately, it sunk and it collapsed under the ocean when there was a massive earthquake. And with it, the wave was so terrifying that washed away hundreds of settlements along the Pacific coast of the Lenca world. And for this, the surviving Taulepas and other nobles were taken to the highlands on the ridges of the volcanic change of Central America. This, of course, has happened on the other side in the Atlantic area, in the Caribbean area. We also have memories of another giant wave, and we, of course, accuse of Capiqueren, the big serpent that we arrested and put in under lock under the ground in the pit of fire, that every now and then shakes and produces massive waves to kill us and to destroy our land, because still wants to take over and have an ocean to cut off the two islands, the North Island and the South Islands. So this destruction of America marks the end of a Pacific seafaring culture. We were very strong seafarers in the Pacific. And then we become traumatized and we look for highlands, so we become Highlanders. Stage 4 then, the resettlement means that the Taulepa clan had to formalize the administration of some of the tribes that are coming in. And to do that, the kingdom is redistributed in a way that can be easier to govern, because with the loss of coastal lands, some of the tribes that survived became very aggressive to the inland people in order to take by force some of their land and have somewhere to live. So based on that need, then the Taulepa family, the Taulepa house, has to redistribute the administration of the land. And there is when we say that was the emergence of the Tauquelepa and also the Calepa or Galpa. So many of the lands that you will find in colonial times when the Spanish arrive and when others arrive, some of the territories, big territories, no, I'm not talking about small comarcas or districts, I'm talking about big territories. What is Honduras, Nicaragua, right down to Veraguas. We have places that you will find them in writing of the historical narrative of the Spanish as Taguxgalpa and Tologalpa. Of course, they are badly pronounced. They actually come from Tau as a root of the house, of the royal house that ruled the land. Tau Alpa is a shortening, because in Taulepa we collapse vowels and we squeeze words to become smaller. So the Tau Ka Le Pa, you will find that it becomes Tau Kalpa, or in these days is Tau Kalpa. And this, of course, then these territories were distributed along what is El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, most of Nicaragua, way before there was any migration from the north, from Mexico and Guatemala. I'm talking about the times when the Ice Age gave rise to these settlements, where the ocean was much, much shallower. And of course, after this, we know there was the intrusion of the Spanish, and then there was a couple of settlements by the Dutch and by the small kingdom that was encouraged by the English in La Mosquitia, a name that was given by foreigners to part of what is Tausgalpa and Tolugalpa. Then we had to back off from there because we were afraid of the mosquito, because the mosquito became the going-between the Dutch and other slave hunting powers, and they used to hunt people from us to sell them as slaves. So we had a very difficult relationship with them. After that, of course, comes the independence of Central America, the short-lived Central American Union, And with that, the fight between the republics, where they reinvent the names of cultures and provinces and districts, etc., etc. And then these republics need to have propaganda to create nationalism, so that people loses the idea of being one people and are able to make war against the neighboring country. If people had the mentality they had before Columbus, they wouldn't actually have an open warfare with each other because they will perceive to be the same people. So what happens is with the birth of the republics, people are taught different culture, different ideas. A lot of the names of places are Mexicanized, are Hispanized, are Christianized, and a new slangs are born to call each other: catrachos, ticos, chochos, and chapines. So slowly, each of the elites that rules each republic deliberately pays the intellectual elite to create cuentos y leyendas, stories and myths, that rewrite the story of each of the republic's origin, inventing not only pre-Columbian ideas, but also reinterpreting deliberately convenient the names of the places, assuming that they know what it means. So a lot of the Lenca names of places, when you read non-indigenous people writing books who were the elite in colonial and post-colonial time, they write that they know the names of the places, even though they never talk to one of us, and they make up completely made up names. Half of the names and their meanings in El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica are either made up names by invading clans from Mexico, from the south, who were not the indigenous from the land, and pretend to know so they can justify their tenure and not go back to the topic of takeover because it's too painful to accept that they were part and are part of the descendants of those who took over the land from indigenous. But also in the Hispanic descendants, they like to believe that they are in control of knowledge, and therefore they completely fabricate meanings of names of Lenca lands, most of the time making up stories that is from Nahuatl or from other either Mexican descending dialects or from others. We have to remember that the Mexican language was elevated as a doctrinal language by the King of Spain. So you could learn Christianity through Castilian or Nahuatl. They were the two Christianization languages in Central America. All the other languages indigenous were these almost like completely abolished and were resisted as probably evil instruments because they were transmitting material that was inconvenient to the church. And hence you will see a greater favorite leaning towards anything that is in Nahuatl because it was in bed with the church, and the church and the state were one. So this is just an overview of the 5 stages of evolution of the Lenca culture. That, of course, involves much more than this, but this is a way of simplifying our journey from the beginning to today. We hope you have enjoyed, and we will be presenting other topics in another opportunity. Thank you for watching.